Excellent. Well, it's 5 past. I know we have people joining us, but I'm going to go ahead and get started with a very, very warm welcome to all of you who are attending our Pride and Resilience Southern Forum. My name is Dina Fidas. I use the pronouns she and her, and I am the Chief Program and Partnerships Officer here at Out and Equal. I count myself among a very fortunate group in that I have been able to work with many of you over the last 14 years, from Lebanon, Tennessee, to Georgia, to Mississippi, on efforts to foster inclusion in the workplace. And I'm deeply grateful to see so many of you. And for those for whom this is comfortable, keep those cameras on because I love seeing actual human faces, not just my own blaring back at me. While I'm being beamed in today from just outside Washington, D.C., my heart is very much in the South, and especially this morning as my wonderful little mama, who I know some of you have heard about. She's from LA, which I hope you all know is Lower Alabama. It is not a city on the West Coast. Having no idea that I was stepping into Southern Forum this morning, she sent my family and I a news article of the rainbow flag being displayed in her native Alabama and the No Hate campaign in the state. And she said, see, change happens even in the South. And so here we are in the third year of the Southern State Strategy Initiative with Out and Equal. And I won't ramble on before we get to these exciting speakers. I'll simply state that we are not observers of the Southern story. We are the protagonists of the Southern story. And we are all shaping a different South. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean that we haven't had the deep grooves of grief, especially this last year. And to that, I would like to take a brief moment of silence to recognize those that we've lost, not only to COVID this year, but also to violence, to hate-fueled violence, and to racist violence. We are all indebted to those who have stood up to injustice, and I know that so many of you stand up to injustice. And part of why I feel so excited and so proud of our work in the South is that to be Southern is to find joy in a funeral. I can't tell you how many times I get a phone call when someone has passed in Alabama and we pick up the phone and we hear, she looked so beautiful. They went with a rose-colored lipstick and she looked beautiful. Now, I hope you all know me well enough to know I'm not making light of grief and death, but to say that when we talk about pride and resilience, resilience is remembering someone's laughter and someone's full presence, even in loss. It's seeing the wave of horrific anti-LGBT, anti-trans bills that have taken over parts of the South, but also seeing that at its core, what it probably means is we're actually winning, we're on the right path, and frankly, it's freaking out some people. Now, it's up to all of us to soften the edges of that violence, of the damage that can be done from these laws. But I think that the more that we gather in community with each other, seek inspiration from each other, listen with our full hearts, and yes, gather up the courage in a session like this to tell our own story, change is absolutely afoot. Before I turn over to our next speaker, well, I can't list every single amazing partner that has brought us to this space. I do want to especially thank Toyota. We have Carrie and Caleb there are part of an in-person watch party. Their new facilities have opened, and so with safe social distancing, they are here. So a special wave to all of our friends in Mississippi. I want to also thank Chevron, Wells Fargo, and in the chat box, my colleagues are going to direct you to our page with all of our partners. These are the companies, if you're looking for a job, if you're making a decision about where to eat dinner, making a decision about a product, these are those partners that have invested in the work in the South, and we thank all of them. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the baton to somebody who has been at the center of work along with dear friends like Steve Smotherman and others, but it's Raquel Barlow at Cracker Barrel. Now, you want to talk about defining one's own story, you take Cracker Barrel. I won't go back in time too much, but I think we all know, perhaps as LGBTQ plus folks, how we first heard about Cracker Barrel. And now Cracker Barrel is a banner partner for our Southern States initiatives. And it's because of the incredible innovation and courage and, yes, storytelling of those LGBT plus and allied folks over at Cracker Barrel. So Raquel has been with the company for about 5 years as a DEI manager, and we are so, so grateful to welcome you. Thank you, Raquel, and thank you all.
Good morning. My name is Raquel Barlow. I use she and her pronouns, and I am the Diversity and Inclusion Manager at Cracker Barrel Old Country Store, based here in Tennessee. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to this Out and Equal Southern States Forum. This quarter's theme of pride and resilience especially struck a chord with me after the year we've had, as well as someone working in the hospitality industry. When I look up the definition of resilience, it was described as the ability to withstand adversity and bounce back from difficult life events. While I agree with the definition, the words bounce back didn't feel completely accurate. We have all gone through a generation defining event and year with ups and downs and bumps and bruises. There were many a day where I didn't bounce out of bed, but more cautiously looked around the corner. I imagine the same could be said for others. But regardless of the enthusiasm we did or did not have, we continued to push forward. Just as our community has pushed forward during the Stonewall riots and against targeted legislation, which has brought us to pride parades and marriage equality. In the spirit of resilience, I'd like to share an impactful experience I had at an Out and Equal conference a few years ago. During one of the general sessions, I met a young woman who worked for Uber. Over the course of our conversation, she shared with me that she was transgender, often traveled for work, and when she did so, would err towards red-eye flights. Now, I'm a morning person, but I just recently took my first red-eye flight about a month ago. So out of everything she shared, I was most surprised and impressed that she sought out these early flights. When I asked her why, what followed was an answer and a perspective that has stuck with me ever since. She revealed that TSA security machines are gender binary, and as a person approaches them to be scanned, a TSA officer must register the person's gender, making that decision in a split second. As a result, when she goes through security, the machine detects a discrepancy between what was entered and what was detected, thereby flagging a threat. This leads to her being searched, potentially delaying the security process for other passengers, and draws attention to herself. In an effort to minimize the attention that exchange draws, she chooses to fly during times where the airport is less populated. Red-eye flights. What dawned on me was how unfair that felt and how she goes out of her way to control the situation, ergo overcome. This spoke to her resiliency, as well as the resiliency of the trans community as a whole. As I mentioned, I am in Tennessee, a state that routinely introduces what we refer to as the slate of hate that directly impacts LGBTQ people and transgender people specifically. What that legislation and many fail to understand is how those behaviors impact individuals. I was an athlete and I understand firsthand what school sports meant to youth, regardless of gender identity and sexual orientation. These were activities that gave me a community, discipline, and an opportunity to thrive, and for some, were life-saving. These bills go beyond targeting youth. They are also workplace issues. You never know who is a parent of a trans child, how legislation will impact who chooses to work at your company or leave it, and what the colleague next to you is going through. This is why I am proud to be in front of you, working with an organization that stands against these attacks. I am proud of our nation for enduring. I am proud of our community for persevering, and I am proud of myself and each and every one of you for adapting. I'm excited to hear from the various companies and employees during this session as we come together to show our pride.
My name is Caleb Hall. Pronouns are he, him, and his. And I currently work with Toyota on the special projects. And for the business partner group, I currently serve on the North American Advisory Council for Spectrum. And we cater to the LGBTQ community and allies.
My name is Carrie Hall, and I am the Experience Center lead for Toyota Mississippi. Caleb and I have been married for about 6 years now legally, and have been together for 21 and a half years now. So pride to me is being able to be proud of me and who I am, and who I've become over the years, and being able to be proud of the fact that I'm part of the LGBTQ community. As far as resilience, I think that for me, we've had to be very resilient in pushing forward, continue the movement, always being able to be leading the path forward with being vocal for who we are as a couple, who we are is a part of this community here in the South.
So I think about where I was before, and as a young lesbian coming out, always living all my life in the southern states, it was very difficult for me in the time that I came out, and through the years, you know, it became more accepted and you know, more recognized, if you will. And then once I came to terms with who I was and actually got the courage to come out as a transgender man, um, resilience for me is more about not blending in and being visible to those who maybe don't have the courage to come out and see that they're not alone and they're not ostracized as something totally completely different. This is what trans looks like, and I want to continue to be visible for those who may be in that dark place that can't come out and don't have the courage or the support to come out on their own.
So here in Tupelo, we have a leader in our allyship. Her name is Melanie Dees, and she's been fantastic ally to the LGBTQ community. She brought it to us and said, you know, how come we don't have a pride celebration in Tupelo? And we said, we're happy to help do that. We took it to the mayor, who had zero pushback for us. They immediately gave us all of the permits that we needed. The very first year that we kicked it off, we did it in just about a 2-month time period, put it all together, and we had hundreds of people turn out. So we knew that we had finally found our voices and found a footing in the Tupelo area. So for me, as a couple, it was obvious for the first 15 years of our relationship that we were a lesbian couple. We would walk into a restaurant and people automatically knew. And here in the South, that's not always welcomed, but we found it to be easier and easier over the years, and we just continue to lead our lives. When Caleb finally decided that he was ready to come out to the public as transgender, I think that the hardest thing for us as a couple was now looking like a normal heterosexual couple, and we fit into what society deemed was a normal relationship. My resilience with that was making sure that we were much more vocal after that to say, this is what trans looks like. This is who we are. We're not going to just quietly sit in a corner and be in that box that society puts us in anymore. We are a trans couple with a bisexual wife. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. And I think that fitting into society in itself has been a struggle for us because it's made us much more vocal in being part of the LGBTQ community.
You know, I could go on and on about the different avenues that telling our story has taken me down. There's been so many people reach out to me from other Toyota plants across the United States. I'd like to talk about one story in particular that really, man, it really just it touched me, um, personally when we attended Starkville Pride, and it was the first Starkville Pride. And when we walked up, we, there were people everywhere, and out of nowhere, this kid comes running up to me, yelling my name like I was some rock star or something, and just talking about how I've really been an influence to him, and his coming out and transitioning and how I really impacted his life by telling my story and letting him know that he wasn't alone and that there were people like him out there.
So I think for me, telling my story has been a difficult one because I always found myself as a bisexual woman who loved this female, and we were in a committed relationship for many, many years. And when he decided to come out as transgender, although I had known for quite a few years, and we had been in therapy for quite a while about it, once he decided to publicly come out, it was almost like, what does that do for my identity? Who am I as a person then? Where do I fit in the LGBTQ community? Because now we are seen as a heterosexual couple. I think that the biggest thing for me is a lot of people have reached out to me also as a wife. How do you deal with it? What are the circumstances? What kind of advice can you give me? My spouse doesn't know where they fit. I've had people here at Toyota have so many questions on where do I go to get resources? How does the process work? I know that your husband came out as transgender. How do I start that process? Working in the field that I do, I'm a little bit more accessible than Caleb is sometimes at work, so they can reach out to me as well as Caleb. Caleb has taken it on as a personal mission to start writing the transgender handbook on how Toyota as a company will deal with a team member when they come out as transgender in the workplace.
So with the transgender toolkit, I'm working with a team of coworkers, and we actually want to develop a roadmap, if you will, for team members that are going through a transition. But we also want to create that roadmap for management and our lead in the plants as well, or the sites. Just to help them when somebody does come to them and they're, hey, I'm transitioning or I'm transgender and I need to know what to do next. It kind of gives them that guide as well on how to guide that team member and help them through the process and give them the correct resources that they need. So it's not just for transitioning team members or employees. It's also for the management team and leads in our workforce as well, to help them through the process.
I think that if you want to make a change in your company, the first steps for you to do is just be vocal about it. find the resources, start with human resources. Are these policies in place? If not, what can I do to change it? Find that one person that can be a mentor to you in a leadership role. They are the ones that will push you and help you get those doors opened. And if you don't have those resources within your company, reach out to another company that already does have those resources. I assure you they're willing to help you work and to give those to your company and lead the way. If the doors don't open, kick them open. I promise you, you won't regret it.
To never give up on what you feel like is important, and to be an upstander, to make sure that everybody is included and everybody is equal. Um, our plant president told us one time, Sean Suggs said one time, "Who's telling you no?" So if you see something and it doesn't fit, or it doesn't seem right, it you know it's out of the realms of inclusiveness and equality. Ask those questions and bring up those issues, and be resilient in what you're asking for and what you're expecting, and be clear on what you're expecting, and don't settle for anything less. And if somebody says no, then you keep going and you keep going and you keep asking. When we first met, we met online, and we talked for, oh my God, every day, like for hours. And I finally, I'm like, well, I want to meet you. And then I had to convince her that I wasn't a serial killer. I, wa- I wasn't stalking her, which I really was, but just trying to convince her that I was a really good person, and convincing her to be brave enough to come and meet me. So um, I told her I wasn't stalking her, but I really was. I mean, I saw her, and it was love at first sight, and that that emotion. I want to say it hadn't changed, but it kind of has, because it's gotten stronger and stronger through the years. But just me trying my best to convince her to, to give me a chance is pretty funny to me.
I guess for me, once he convinced me for us to meet, I lived in Atlanta. He lived in South Carolina. It was a long drive. I worked retail management at the time, had been up all night, hadn't had much sleep, stopped at the gas station, bought a lottery ticket, and said, if I win, I'm going. If I lose, I'm not. I won $5 that day, and won the love of my life. I still have that lottery ticket and still have the love of my life. So I guess I won all around that day. I guess that I'm the most proud of where we have come over the past 21 plus years. Um, you know, Toyota has given us a platform to not only use our voices for change, but also to change our lives. Um, we have come so far as a couple. Um, we're able to do things together. We have a great group of friends. We have great allyship in this area. I think that I'm incredibly proud of where we are, who we've become, the things that we are able to accomplish, just because we have opened so many doors using Toyota as a platform for us, out and equal partnerships, human rights campaign partnerships. We've been able to really have a voice in our community, and I'm proud to be a part of the Southern community.
I think just looking back on where we were and where we are today, going through life, and I mean, just a relationship alone is a challenge, and it's almost like a business you have to work on every single day, and you have to improve, and you have to kaizen, and you have to think of different ways to make that work. But in the midst of all of that, I kind of threw a monkey wrench in the whole thing when I changed direction, just to go towards who I was, truly. um, but just thinking, in the beginning of my transition, one of the most difficult decisions that I made was the possibility that I could lose her. And, was I willing to do that? And, with that, um, it took a lot longer than it should have for me to have the courage to come out. But, just knowing that I could finally take that step and become my true authentic self and know that the love of my life would stand by my side. Um, Many times when people go through transitions, they go through a lot of changes and lose that part of their life, that their comfort zone or their partner, that they thought would be there for the rest of their lives. So for us to be where we were and where we are now, and all of the things that we've been through, and um, still standing strong, that's my proudest moment, just sitting beside this lady right here.
Happy Pride today and every day. My name is Monique Evans. I'm with Wells Fargo's Wholesale Banking Operations, and I'm also an advisor on our Gender Identity and Expression Advisory Council, which supports our Transgender Engagement Chair, and that falls under the Enterprise Leadership Team. It's one of our employee resource networks. Locally, I'm also a board member for a resource center located here in Dallas. I represent the great state of Texas. I'm honored to be a part of this celebration and this engagement regarding Southern states. Thank you for having me. I'm tasked with the responsibility of talking about resilience. And it's funny because when I think about resilience, it's one of those things that me personally, I don't, you know, it's demonstrated within the act of whatever it is that you're going through, but it's not necessarily called out as resilience until after the fact, and more so is deemed that way by other people, especially those who bear witness to your circumstance or your triumphs, or even those who have heard of them will call you resilient. Me personally, being transgender and having transitioned in my 20s and in between jobs and facing challenges that most people face with an added issue of wanting to acknowledge and live the way that I desired. And I remember my mom had fears about me transitioning, and she wanted me to wait until I found another job. But I was adamant that I didn't want to wait. I wanted to walk in the door, even in the interview process, as me, and let them see that this is who I am. And in spite of, prejudice, attitudes, and biases that people have, you can't deny my experience. You can't deny my professionalism. You can't deny everything that I'm bringing to the table. And I was resolute in that. And I'm so happy that I was, looking back on it. I think that was a resilience that was being demonstrated, understanding that I could no longer live in not in not in an untruthful way, but I just simply reached a place in my life where it just felt right, and it felt like a great opportunity to say, "Hey world, this is me." And beyond saying, "Hey world, this is me," looking in the mirror and saying, "Hey self, this is you." I have been on this journey for quite a long time, and I recognized that I had to disconnect from the expectations of what it is to be a woman by society's standards and carve out my own pathway, acknowledging and recognizing that yes, there is a model, but there are variances to every aspect of whomever you may be. And so when we think about gender and it being on a spectrum and the expression of gender, I gave myself room to grow. And I hope that everyone out there has room to grow, whatever it may be, however you want to apply that for yourself. And know that pride is not just 1 month out of the year, it is every day. Encourage yourself, surround yourself with people who are willing to affirm you and recognize the value that you present every day and see you as a human, not just a category or a statistic. I think that one of the great things about being blessed to live life and make it out of your challenges and get beyond struggles is that when you evolve, you're able to look back and reflect and you see the growth and you see the things that you've come out of, and hopefully it's made you a better person. I know that with me, there's so many examples, and I'm so glad that I have had the impact on the lives of my family to be representative of trans and let them know I'm still the same person that you've always loved. And now you get to know me and hopefully appreciate me in a better way because I get to be me and I get to give you an even better version of me because there's no shame, there's no hiding, and I put it all on the table. And here lately, with everything that's been going on, I've got back in touch with writing and more so poetry. I might get back into short stories, who knows? I may even one day write a book. But poetry has always been cathartic to me. It's my release, it's my outlet. And I hope that everyone out there has some way to be able to release and have an outlet for their emotions and creativity in order to get through the day and get through whatever you might be going through. And I just want to encourage you, in spite of the current climate and the laws and legislations that the government wants to present to put us in our place, and recognize that we are fighting. And yes, there are a lot of accomplishments that have been garnered, but every day the fight continues. Stay encouraged, stay strong, stay resilient, and tell your story. Somebody needs to hear it. I know that it's been really impactful and beneficial to a lot of folks hearing me tell my story. But the main person that it benefited the most was me, recognizing that in so many ways I was living to survive. And sometimes you can get disconnected from your reality by doing that because you simply want to keep yourself safe. You simply want to get through the day. And it's when I told my story and really sat down and took stock of the things that I've gone through, and I'm like, huh, and I'm still here. It's an awesome feeling. I wish the same for all of you. And I thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. I appreciate being a part of this. And I wish you all the best. Happy Pride 365.
That was incredible, absolutely incredible. And now it's a pleasure to round out these powerful, powerful stories of joy, love, pride, and resilience with our dear friend, Toni Barrington.
Thank you, Dina. Hi, everyone. I'm Toni Barrington, and I'm a corporate compliance analyst at Chevron in Houston, Texas. Go Houston. Um, I want to start off by paraphrasing what resilience is as defined by the American Psychological Association. It's the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility. and adjustments to external and internal demands. I'm here to share my story of coming out on the job, but not coming out as a queer woman of color, actually coming out as a person who's been living with bipolar disorder for 27 years. On October 31st, 2019, and I'll never forget, I was in a meeting with my manager at the time, and I hit the climax, or should I say the crash, of a manic episode. So let me kind of explain what mania is for me. It's going about 120 miles an hour for about 7 months straight. And I mean, not stopping, but just going 120 miles per hour and then hitting zero. You just never know where you're going to hit zero at. So I was at in a meeting in Chevron, and my zero came. All I can remember is the compassion that manager showed towards me by getting someone from our EAP department to come and assist me. I was treated with compassion and dignity as I had to leave and go on a 12-week break. So during that 12 weeks, and let me kind of explain to you how bipolar works when the crash happens. You're physically tired, you're sore, your brain has just pretty much tapped out, and just kind of showing you this is what happens with your brain once you come down from that crash. I went through what's called intensive outpatient therapy for approximately 8 weeks. That's 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, for roughly 8 weeks. And just to kind of reset and learn behaviors that would help me get back into, I like to say, society. So when I came back to work, my EAP advocate, and she's amazing, was by my side as I met with my manager at the time and my lead at the time. She was by my side, encouraging me to just be strong, to come back to work and just take your time. So that's when I decided, I said, well, I feel like I'm in an environment where I can be safe, because I've never come out with living with bipolar disorder at any job. So that's when I decided that I felt like Chevron was a safe enough place to start sharing my story, at least with my teammates at that time. And I opened up and I shared my story with teammates, and they embraced me. And just to kind of give you an idea how difficult that was at first, because people crack jokes and say, oh, she's bipolar, he's bipolar, and it's not quite what people say or crack jokes about. But I shared with people, and I will never forget one of the business analysts at that time. I told him, I said, hey, I can't remember how to do this. It's just because your brain just kind of goes through that shake and you're waiting for the glitter to settle. And he came and sat by me and helped me. He did, others did on my team. They started sharing their stories and challenges that they've had. And then coming back in January of 2020 was great. Started kind of getting in the groove of things, and then COVID happened. So, that the world changed once again for me, like for everyone. And and going through that settling of the glitter period, I had to adapt, like all of us did, and get used to adapting in an environment that was all different for all of us, more in the virtual world. When I'm the type of person, and my friends will tell you, and my family will tell you, I like in-person contact. So my EAP advocate, once I started getting back into the rhythm of things, she said, if you feel comfortable enough, I would like to do or your story or my story moment with you to share across the enterprise. And I said, you know what, when I'm ready, I definitely will do it. She never pushed me to do it. And I said, well, you know what I would like to do is an our story. I would like to do the story with my manager, so she could share her part, because she stepped up and spoke up and got me some help while I was at the job. So we agreed, and I thought to myself, Tony, what did you commit to? People across the enterprise, that's all of Chevron, will be able to view this video. But I said I felt like I needed to do it in order to help those who might be struggling not only with bipolar or anxiety or depression, but all of anybody who was just struggling, adjusting to being alone, being under quarantine. So I thought about that and I decided to do it. And I'm so glad I did. I had people reaching out to me afterwards in private and just sharing, and it's been a great experience. It's helped me to have faith in people and that people will accept me for what I have to bring. Allowing myself to also be vulnerable, because being vulnerable allows you to be authentic. And that's what Chevron was saying, bring your authentic self to work. Well, that's what I decided to do. And by sharing my story, it's helped others to at least ask questions. I hope has helped others in the workplace to move forward and seek counseling, therapy, whatever they need to be authentic, vulnerable, and bring themselves to work. I'm so glad that I had the support of my friends and my family at home, but I also had continued support with my Chevron family that I still have support from. I've learned to be more honest about like, for instance, I'll be on medication for the rest of my life, but it has to be tweaked during different times of my life. And I have a supervisor now who I feel very comfortable saying, hey, I need to take a couple of days. I have a medication adjustment that I'm going through. So I'm just glad to be in a space where I feel safe and that I can feel that support. I know that's not like that for everybody in the workplace, but I do want to encourage everyone, if you're not feeling well, if you're mentally tapped, if you're burnt out, I encourage you all to seek, if you don't feel comfortable going to your company's EAP, just reach out to someone who's licensed, a therapist, or even open up enough to share what you're going through, your struggles, with a friend or family member. When you feel like you need help, please get help. It's just, we all are going through something together. And whether that's with the effects of COVID psychologically on us, there are resources out there and they can help you. So in closing, I want to show you how life looks now once the glitter settles. And I want everyone to remember, we're stronger together than apart. So be okay saying you're not okay when you need to. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Out and Equal, for giving me the opportunity to share my story. And I'd like to thank my Chevron family for just being there for me, supporting me. And I'd like to thank my family also and my friends for their support. So thank you.
Wow. Whew. Thank you, Tony, so much. Thank you to Monique and to Caleb and to Carrie and to Raquel. I am live and was not anticipating being choked up at this moment, and that's okay. And I'm going to transition to this next section with a little change in plan. And that change in plan is specifically, I admire every guest we have, but it's specifically because of you, Tony. So I typically, when I give these talks, which some of you have known me for about 15 years, and Karina, we can go ahead and pull up those slides. When I typically give these talks, I tell this really cute, funny story about coming out and about my little mama. And you all have heard me say this, my little mama from Lower Alabama. The cute story I tell is true, and you can find it in a TED Talk I did. You can find it elsewhere. The reason I usually tell that story is because it lets me not tell another story. And that other story is related to this first question, which is, when was the first time you heard about LGBTQ people? And I say, it's okay and very possible that these terms were not used. When I was very little, the majority of our family socializing was with friends from my dad's an immigrant, friends from our community, friends from the church. And there were a few families that had these mysterious uncles. And I had maybe met the uncle once or twice, but I'd ask about, how come they're not at, Easter? How come they're not at Thanksgiving? And I would be told that they were mentally ill or they were sick. And it wasn't until I was a young adult that I found out they were neither, they were just gay. I came out very, very young, and I tell people I sort of earned my scrapes very young. I don't hold a lot of shame or embarrassment or anything really about being LGBTQ. It's been my profession. It's, I'm married. I will reference my wife without hesitation and my beautiful stepchildren. But one piece of this that I have held on to is the shame and the taboo and the idea that you would put somebody aside because of their mental illness, because probably the most defining part of my life is how I have learned to live with depression. And like Tony, it's a big combination of grit and resilience, medication, yes. I run just about every day. And for those of you that follow me on Facebook, I also make it my noticing run. I take pictures of nature. I get myself out of my head. I get myself in my head. And I think so much of who I am as a person, as a mom, as a wife, as a professional is because my mind is always looking ahead, and in some ways probably trying to just always run farther and farther and farther from the person I was, in my young adulthood, who was really, really struggling with depression. And you all have never seen that 22-year-old under her covers, pondering suicide, but I know her shadow's right there. And I think in many ways I've sort of grown to try to distance myself from her. And I think perhaps similar to what some of us have done to compensate for other things we thought were shameful, I've actually developed a lot of strengths. And I really thank you, particularly Tony, for inspiring me to share a little bit more honestly. And I will also, I've spared some of you who've heard that same story probably 15 times. I'll tell it to you another day. So with that, I want to tell you that the first time I heard about LGBTQ people, it was completely conflated with sickness and illness. And I want to ask you, and if you feel like you can put it in the chat box, fantastic. But what was the first thing you heard? Was it a bad word? Was it a kind word? This is the South. And so I can't tell you how many times I've done this in person and somebody says, well, we all knew the organist at church was gay, but we respected him and didn't say anything. So I'm curious what messages you absorbed, or what was the first thing that you heard about this population of people? Thank you for those that are sharing. Gay neighbors. Did anybody know some bachelor neighbors? Thank you for this. Gay people are sick, child molesters, and they will burn in hell. An uncle, it's not the way God intended. Horrible jokes, absolutely. The F word from one of my siblings. A death sentence, yep. My PE teacher was a D word. Yep. Now, what's striking about this, these are messages that were infused, it's looking like, from very early childhood. And I'm not psychologizing anybody on this Zoom, but I think it's safe to say that there's a real imprint there from the first messages we hear. Excuse me. And it can continue to have a surprising effect on how we tell our own story. And I'm not just speaking to LGBTQ people right now, I mean our allies. A lot of our allies may have learned that to show respect is to not acknowledge that somebody's transgender or not acknowledge that somebody's a lesbian. And what happens then in the workplace? Well, it means that my wife and I don't get acknowledged, but other couples do, other families do. It means that someone has been taught to show respect. Maybe I won't completely look you in the eye or acknowledge when you reference your gender history or your family. And that can have this snowball effect where the LGBTQ person is thinking, am I invisible? Do I not exist? Why don't I get that same level of reciprocity from my colleagues? And so I would like for you all to sort of sit with this just a bit as I take you through some other pieces of a framework of how to cultivate your narrative, because I think one of the first pieces of cultivating your narrative is to acknowledge to yourself, what were those early messages you received about our community? And thank you again. Please feel free to keep the chat box going here. Karina, we can go to the next slide because I think we're into then. So I have to say, I don't believe I have seen a single positive story. I think we're seeing all bad language and shame and ostracizing, and so that is pretty remarkable given that we are nearly 200 people on this call. So the question I have for you now, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are not simply reading a story of being LGBTQ or allied in the South, we are the protagonists in this story. And so centering yourself in your own truth is to center yourself in your own power. There's a reason that Monique and Caleb and Carrie and Raquel and Tony are just reverberating out of our computers right now. It is because when you stand or you sit and you're placed in your truth, you emanate your own sense of power, because who you are and your narrative is something that no one can talk you out of or take away from you. I think it's also helpful to center yourself in your own worth. And particularly in the workplace, I think Caleb had such a powerful example of the multiplier effect. When we're honest about who we are, people who we've never met might run up to us. People on the other side of the plant who 2 years from now might have a child come out to them as gay or transgender, they're going to find safety and solidarity with you. The last thing I want to highlight here is that authenticity is not the same as bearing all. You get to decide what you share. In other words, if you are not ready, like I wasn't until today, to tell the full picture, it doesn't mean that you're hiding or you're dishonest. It means that you are taking stock of your own risk, your own vulnerability, and your own desire to share with whom and when. So Karina, I think, yeah, super, thank you. So when it comes to the workplace and we think about cultivating our narrative, I think it's very helpful to assess your starting point. Now, sometimes that starting point happens on the spur of the moment, as mine just did, but it's just a few of us on Zoom this morning, right? I mean, you'll keep anything I need secret, I'm sure. But asking yourself, who am I in this setting? Because when it comes to the workplace, you have a unique sphere of influence, you have a unique responsibility and obligation. If you're an executive, if you're a manager, you can ask yourself, am I a friend? Am I a colleague? Am I seeking support? What is your starting point? I do want to emphasize, as I think we all are painfully aware, we do not have full legal equality. And while many of you are with employers that are supportive, fundamentally ensuring, that you have your taking stock of your own safety. Do you have an employer policy that protects you from discrimination? For example, if coming out as transgender may jeopardize your job, that is something to take into account. Now, thankfully, under this administration, with the Supreme Court decision, we have avenues, but I'm not going to sit here and suggest that any of that is easy. So I encourage all of you, assess not only sort of your emotional risk, but also your sense of safety. And ask yourself, what level of sharing do I want to, am I comfortable with? And what do people know about me to date? Is this the first time they're getting to know you? How much do you want to tell? Again, all of this is coming from this place of self-empowerment and you guiding your own journey. When it comes to the workplace, the last decade has seen an extraordinary wave of progress, but also steps back. We have had several landmark Supreme Court decisions. We are the closest to passing the Equality Act as we ever have been. We have also seen, as several of us have mentioned, waves of anti-LGBTQ bills, and it's been the business community that has had a really muscular response. They're the ones taking out ads in newspapers. They're the ones lobbying in state houses to say, not only is this bill unjust, it doesn't serve our interests. And we know that you lawmakers care about the interests of the business community. And so when you think about strategic sharing, is there an objective here? Is there a goal? For example, if your business is pondering weighing in on a public policy matter, almost nothing is as persuasive as an employee coming forward and saying, this affects me or this affects my family. And so telling your story, for example, as the parent of a transgender child right now, or telling your story as someone with a spouse or a partner who's transgender, not just in terms of the legislative piece, but also we know that still many companies have a ways to go when it comes to transgender inclusive healthcare coverage. You know, taking these expansive views and saying, okay, if I'm going to tell my story, not just in an ERG meeting, not just to a colleague, but more formally and coming out to decision makers, identifying that strategy, that end game, and then from there deciding just how much you want to share, what will serve you well and what will serve your broader goal and purpose. I also encourage you, what is your sphere of influence? Do you have allies? Can you bring them in? Can you have the first sort of, you know, confidential or closed door conversation where you talk about your family in a very open way that perhaps you haven't done yet? Engage your ally, engage your manager, and then go to the executive champion of the ERG. So charting that path. This morning has really flown by for the best of reasons and in the best of ways. If you're like me, you have a queue of LinkedIn and emails and people that you can't wait to follow up with and perhaps see in person in the coming months. I wanted to see, given all that we've discussed this morning, if, and I know it's all very sudden, so it's okay if the answer is no, you're reflecting, but if any of our speakers wanted to offer some closing thoughts or insights, you can take yourself off mute. Raquel or Caleb, Carrie, Tony, Monique.
I would like to say thank you to Out and Equal for the work that you guys are continuously doing to make the workplace all inclusive for everyone. And I just want everyone, I want to thank everyone for being willing to listen to my story. But as always, I want to say it's okay to say you're not okay. And please, if you're in mental distress or you're feeling burnt out or just tired, please reach out to someone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Now, Monique raised a hand. Corina or Jack, that might mean that she needs to be unmuted by the authority of muting Jack. And I see Raquel is raising a hand as well.
Unmute. Yes. Okay. There we go. Thank you. The authority of unmuting. Yeah. So there were a few folks that identified that their ERGs are, you know, in the inception point and just, you know, being created and cultivated and stuff like that. So if you feel the need to reach out to me, ours has been around for quite some time. I can give a little bit of advice on that. Just, you know, stay the course, keep doing the work, making, you know, yourself and the need for those resources to be visible, because, you know, it's, like I say all the time, it's one thing to have policies and procedures in place, but the real work begins on the interpersonal level. And your colleagues are the best ones to join forces with in order to make change in the workplace. So yeah, just continue to stay strong and keep doing what you're doing. We really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Any of our other speakers?
The chains of mute have been broken. I just want to say again, thank you all for this organization and everyone joining in. I think I said in every breakout group, but if not, I'm just going to round it back out. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I call that out right now in the spirit of resiliency. And so do not be discouraged if you do not get, the best experience initially, or with that one person, there's someone out there that's willing to give you that level of support. There's some organization out there willing to do that, and the organizations you're with are often trying to do that work as well. So I would just call out, as an introvert, actually just keep those fillers out and be looking for those type of opportunities. And the other piece that I talked about in all the breakout groups is signifiers. So however you can, whether it's clothing, whether it's safe zone magnets, whatever it needs to be, if there are ways that you can get your ERGs to be handing those out for the allies out there, if there are ways that you can be putting that out there, it could very much save someone in their mindset and such like that. So just be there for each other, y'all. And thanks for being there for me.
Thank you so much. I don't know if Caleb or Carrie wanted to share anything else. They may be in a crowded room right now, so.
Hey, we're here. Sorry, we got enthralled in our conversations with everybody, so we've kind of missed the conversation that you guys are having. So we just want to say we've had some really good conversation here. We have several of our executives, several community members here, and we appreciate the open dialogue that this has allowed us to have, and the conversations that need to be had. That struggles, we're not all we're not perfect, and we still have some struggles and we still have some work to do. So we appreciate the opportunity to be able to work on that and talk about it.
Thank you so much. Oh, did I hear somebody else jump in? Well, this is Dina. I thank you all so much. I have been profoundly moved this morning, and I am indebted to all of you for what you do, the truth that you live, the work you do, and to those particularly who were the first to share elements of their identity on this call, the first to be bold, and for those of you whose voice shook or who teared up in the group breakouts, just know that is sort of the ultimate in strength. And I am so deeply appreciative of this, as I know the entire team at Out and Equal is. Erin Uritis, our CEO, Madeline Peru, Karina Hendren, and CVV Burrito, who worked so hard on this forum. Thank you all. I'll leave you with one very small sort of pride challenge. Well, let me leave you with a few. One is, let's all stay in touch. We do have an RSVP list, but we will reach out to you to ensure that we have permission before connecting us all in a special Southern Forum list. The second is, for those of us that are enjoy social media, LinkedIn, etc., please do connect. Absolutely. And you're most free to share, if you like, how people can stay in touch with you in the chat box here. And the third is these steps towards institutional change, the steps to dismantle transphobia, homophobia, racism, and more. It is often down to these daily acts of courage and resilience. And often each of us has the ability to lessen the extent to which our friends or our colleagues have to be resilient. You know, we talk about resilience as this amazing thing. Oh my gosh, you're so resilient. You're so resilient. You're a brave Black transgender woman in corporate America today. And that is true, absolutely. And it's incumbent upon an ally like myself, a cisgender lesbian, to lessen the load, to lessen the need for so much resilience, because shoring up your resources to be resilient can be exhausting. And we know that a lot of emotional and even physical energy has to go towards it. So we can all shoulder somebody else's burden. We can be there for each other. And I think that forums like this demonstrate that we can do it in all of our messiness too. Our messiness, our joy, and our beauty. We've all made mistakes. We've all stepped in it, and we're still in it together. And so with that spirit of solidarity and allyship, I wish you all a very, very meaningful Pride season. And if you do nothing else after this, go ahead and tell one person who might be surprised how you spent the last 2 hours. Because for someone to hear that, wow, your keynote speaker talked about having bipolar. Your other speaker talked about what it means to navigate the world through as a couple through a transition. I mean, these are those door openers that will come back around in all kinds of multiplier effect ways. We had somebody join us from Mexico City. And when I think about the power of telling your story at work, I got to work in Mexico City for about a decade, and we're still doing work there. But my dear friend Fernando, who lived his truth and came out on the job there before there were any ERGs, before anyone was talking about this, about 8 years later, his colleague, who always respected him and, was vaguely an ally, let's say, not kind of out there, not against anybody. But we came back sort of after this ERG had grown at a huge company in Mexico. And she came up just streaming tears because her son had come out to her. And she had a living, breathing example in Fernando of what it means to have a joyful professional life as a gay man in Mexico City. And so every time I think, did I really just share in front of 200 people? Did I really just do that? I have to remind myself that when we all take these risks and we trust in each other, it comes back tenfold. And so, again, I want to thank all of you. You are the ones who are enriching our work together and enriching the world. And the fact that on Monday or later today, the first time somebody hears about an LGBTQ person, it's not necessarily going to be a joke or a bad word. It's going to be a colleague or an executive talking about the power and the value of our community. And that is the change that I think we are all contributing to. And I'm immensely grateful to be in this with you. So again, thank you all so much. Whew, happy Pride. I guess we're all going to need either a virtual float or a disco ball or something. But again, thank you all, and let's keep these conversations going. Take good care today.